This has Rangers fans very concerned, as we're going to break down one thing in particular that will be the deciding factor for this entire organization moving forward with a new coaching staff and younger players. This is a new look team, and some Rangers fans are getting very concerned. We're going to break down exactly what that means in this episode of Rangers Digest. But before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 77% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening with the New York Rangers, go down below, hit that free subscribe button, because this is the place to be for all your daily New York Rangers content. But Bret, let's get right into it. There's something that I see out there online. I see it in the comments. It's been like this cloud hanging over the entire Rangers organization for as long as I can remember, as long as most fans can remember at this point. And it's, I think, really boils down to a disconnect between, scouting and player development. And this is a big thing moving forward because this team is going to be a lot younger. This team is going to be, I don't want to say unrecognizable next season, but it's going to be very different, right? And you're going to be relying on different players and younger players to play a role. And I wanted to bring this up. NYR Louis says, on paper, and I don't think he's wrong, that the Rangers might have the top or one of the top prospect pools in the league. And if you look at it, again, on paper, when they were drafted, all of these things, they kind of do. They have some great prospects coming through the system. Now they have Scott Morrow and Malcolm Spence. We're not going to touch on them too much in this video. Bret, you're going to do a video on that tomorrow. So anyone who wants a deep dive into those players, go check out that video. That's coming very soon. But, you have a bunch of guys like Gabe Perreault. You have Garand, right, who looks like he's going to be coming up as well. Sikora is like, stuff on him is very quiet. I feel like there's a huge disconnect between development in this organization and drafting. They're drafting really good players, difference-making players, but then when they come up to the main squad, you can see here the development camp roster, so many good players. EJ Emery, who they drafted last year, when they eventually make the NHL, they don't develop into stars. Look at Alexis Lafreniere right now, right? Like, some people still consider him a prospect. He's not. He's entering like his fourth and fifth years in the league at this point. He's not a prospect, hasn't developed into a star. Are you seeing the same problem? I'm seeing a lot of this, kind of being discussed online. I feel like moving into the future, especially with them wanting to get younger and more tenacious, this is something that they have to address, or it's just going to leave them in the dust.
Yeah, it will. And I wanted the Rangers to, when they fired Peter Laviolette, I wanted the Rangers to think outside the box, have a different, viewpoint moving forward, get off of the retread coaches. But, I've changed my stance here on Mike Sullivan. He's the guy, after the reports came out from Larry Brooks and others about the disconnect between last year's team, I think that the Rangers really needed a coach like Mike Sullivan that's going to walk in there and exactly who the boss is. A guy that's going to bring players together, a guy that has done it at the highest level, winning 2 Stanley Cups. And this is a team that, they announced a rebuild. Let's not forget, in
Yeah.
2018, this team announced a rebuild. They were coming off a Stanley Cup final, an Eastern Conference final, a playoff appearance, and then the 2017-2018 season, the Rangers missed the playoffs. They fired Alain Vigneault, and they announced a rebuild. They traded players like Ryan McDonough, Rick Nash, and others, announced that rebuild, brought in David Quinn for 2018, 2019, 2020, and it was proven that David Quinn was not the right coach at the right time. The team never quite developed the way the Rangers wanted it to. They were very good on special teams and the power play, which I spoke about yesterday, that the best version of the Rangers is when their special teams is cooking on all cylinders. But like I said, the Rangers announced that rebuild. It never worked out. And a big reason why is, let's not forget, we all love the bread man, but this is a team that was rebuilding, and they decided to go all in the year after, in 2019, on Artemi Panarin, which is very much a win now type of move. So you're put yourself in this weird spot, Darius, where you're rebuilding, but you bring in a player like Artemi Panarin, and you get back into those winning ways, because the Rangers they have a lot of pride, this franchise. Like I said, they were coming off a Stanley Cup, an Eastern Conference final, a playoff appearance. They missed the playoffs that one year, and then they said, we're going to rebuild. So they bring in Panarin, and they go back to their old ways, and it put them in a weird spot where they were in between wanting to contend and going all in on the rebuild. And it's hard to do that in New York. I understand it's hard to sell the fans on that, but if you're going to announce a rebuild, Darius, you got to go all in. You can't be in between.
No, absolutely not. And I like that you brought up Mike Sullivan. I want to bring him up as well. And they kind of did that. You're right. You bring in Panarin. You know what he's going to offer you goal scoring wise. And of course, it resulted in two Eastern Conference Finals in 3 years, 2022 and 2024, of course, but not necessarily good enough to beat, let's say, the Florida Panthers, right? And obviously, a couple of years ago, they couldn't get over the hump against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Not that anybody really could in those years, but still, that's something you have to consider, right? And they kind of sped up the rebuild a little bit too quickly. A lot of their players, were kind of forced to make the NHL, like Lafreniere, let's say, and make an impact, and wasn't really, developed properly. Another point I want to bring up that, and you brought it up first with Mike Sullivan, is that I think in hiring Mike Sullivan, and again, he doesn't necessarily control some of the player development, right? But once they're on the team, he certainly does. I think in hiring him, it was a great move for the organization because they're trying to establish a new culture. Some of these guys, like Keandre Miller, he's gone now, right? But it didn't work out. Alexis Lafreniere, I keep bringing up. Some of the younger guys on the team have already had 3 coaches at the NHL level. That's really hard because you're implementing new systems. You're still learning the league, right? And you're struggling at times. And I feel like at times they could be struggling because of that. So they're in it for the long haul at this point. I keep bringing up Alexis Lafreniere. This is a guy that needs stability, I think, at the NHL level in terms of coaching. Mike Sullivan hopefully will offer that, and I don't think that this is the type of hire where you're going to fire him again in 3 years. I don't think that's what this is. I feel like they're trying to, Chris Drury, this is, have some stability. But I will maintain that I think, director of player personnel talking about, Sean Barnhill, a guy who was just drafted this past draft that looks like he's going to be, a little bit of a hidden gem in the organization. I feel like there's a disconnect between the scouting staff and the player development staff, and I feel like it's coming out now, and fans are not allowed to get excited about prospects like this because you should be allowed to get excited about a prospect like this, for example. But I feel like anytime the Rangers make a trade for a guy like Kerry Terrence, let's say, which is another guy I wanted to bring up, fans are not getting excited about it because they know that they're not going to develop into NHL players, or they're kind of going to be lackluster at the NHL level. Maybe, get traded and then go to another team and find their stride. And it's getting repetitive. It's getting boring and frustrating for Rangers fans. So do you see that as well, Bret? I feel like that's kind of what Rangers fans are feeling right now. And it's getting hard to get, really excited about prospects when realistically you should, because on paper, these guys are great players.
I absolutely feel it, Darius. I mean, there's no confidence because there's no resume. I mean, if you look back, I'm glad you bring up coaching philosophy, but I will say in terms of resume, Mike Sullivan is known as, he's coached Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, he's had Marc-Andre Fleury, he's had these win now players, these superstar players, but he's also done a nice job developing players and giving players that he believes are young and ready a real chance and a real runway to succeed. I'm going to bring up one of those players here in just a moment that I believe compares to Alexis Lafreniere, but I'm so glad you brought up coaching philosophy because it's really hard for these young players when you're changing coaches every 2 years, and not only just changing coaches that are experienced, win now coaches, these are tough, stuck in their ways, veteran type of coaches, which makes it hard to really connect with a younger type prospect. And like I said, when the Rangers fired Alain Vigneault, they brought in David Quinn. Obviously, he was fired. But then after that, they went full in on the retread route. They went to the Gerard Gallants of the world for 2 seasons. They had some success with Gallant. Obviously, they went to Peter Laviolette shortly after that for 2 seasons, had some success with Peter Laviolette as well. And now they're going to Mike Sullivan, what some could consider a retread coach. But what you can't go against is that Gallant, Laviolette, and Mike Sullivan all have a resume, all have a track record, so you have to respect that. Yep. But they are also win now type of coaches that are going to not have as much trust and put as much faith into the younger guys. They have a shorter leash and won't put as much trust into the youth. So when these type of coaches see that the Rangers are changing their head coaching position every 2 years, they're going to be nervous to put all their eggs into their basket. They want to go with star veteran players that they believe will win games for them. They don't want to waste time experimenting on these younger players and risking their job security. That's not what they want to do. So I really hope Mike Sullivan takes a different approach that Gallant and Laviolette take. And we saw him do it with a player like Jake Gensel, who I believe has some similarities with Alexis Lafreniere when 100%. You look at stature, when you look at position, and another big problem, Darius, with the Rangers is that they move players off of their natural positions too often. I know Philip Hedl was a player that had durability issues, but this is a guy that they kept bouncing around between wing and center, never really had a true position. And they did the same exact thing with Alexis Lafreniere. They moved him off from left wing to right wing. They thought he was going to be this can't miss Sidney Crosby type player that could just make that transition no problem, and it really backfired. And you saw what Jay Gensel has turned into here, folks. You saw what he was in Pittsburgh with Mike Sullivan. You know, Rangers fans, how he destroyed us time in and time out. It felt always like Jake Gensel was sticking a knife in our back all the time, getting a clutch goal. And this is a player that under Mike Sullivan, that was an all-star. 2021-2022 season, he had a breakout year, played all 82 games, had 84 points. He was an absolute stud. So I hope to see the same from Lafreniere and others. I really hope Mike Sullivan has a different philosophy than Laviolette and Gallant.
And I think that he definitely will. I mean, we saw an example of exactly what you were talking about late in the season with Peter Laviolette, where he wasn't playing Gabe Perreault when you knew that you weren't going to make the playoffs, but he continued to rely on the guys, the veteran guys, that he knows exactly what he's going to get out of them, right? But we were all screaming, please play Gabe Perreault. We know you're not going to make the playoffs. Just see what you have in him. But, you know, these types of coaches, they rely too much on what they know sometimes, and that's okay at times. But you know, we all knew what was going to happen. They were going to miss the playoffs, right? But obviously, with Mike Sullivan, I think things can be a little bit different in that regard. Like you said, you know, the development staff in Pittsburgh took Jake Gensel to a point. He was like a middling prospect, still a great player and had high upside, but then Mike Sullivan took him the rest of the way and turned him into the player that he is, right? And obviously he's a great player now. So, and a clutch player. That's the biggest thing too. So I am very excited to see what Mike Sullivan is, you know, going to be able to do with this team. But that's, you know, when they're on the team. So I'm excited to see what he can do with some of the guys like Lafreniere, like a Bret Berard, let's say, for example. There's a couple of guys here you can see, like even the fourth line, what he can do with some of those guys. I feel like there's another level to Rempe's game still, right? Because he's only adding different elements to it. So I wonder what he can do with that. Some of the young defensemen as well. Matthew Robertson, for example, those teetering guys. But I am concerned about some of the guys who've been drafted, who are great players, putting up amazing points and work, like EJ Emery, let's say, maybe not points, but, you know, developing into a good defensive defenseman. I'm worried about them transitioning, right? And I feel like a lot of fans are, and it's getting really hard to get excited about prospects at times. But we'll see what Mike Sullivan brings. It's going to be a new culture. I feel like, you know, some stability will be good for some of the younger guys as well. We'll see where they take this. But Bret, any final thoughts? Because I feel like Rangers fans are just talking about this, and they're sick of talking about this because it's been going on for so long. And hopefully this is the start of something that's a little bit different.
Yeah, well, my final thoughts are glad you bring up Matthew Robertson. I'm a fan of Matthew Robertson, a nice left-handed, big shot defenseman. I mean, 6'4", over 200 pounds. I like what I saw from him. He's played a few seasons in the AHL at this point, coming off his best year, especially offensively, you know, with 24 assists, 25 total points. But he's a big physical guy that I like on the left-handed side. When he played in the NHL for the Rangers, he had a few good games. He had some good moments. I believe he was like a +3 in a few games for the Rangers, so that's good. EJ Emery, a player that I believe doesn't really have any offensive upside, but has top 4 defenseman, you know, ceiling, because this is a guy that's got the athletic traits. He's very big. He's great penalty kill specialist. I love how he blocks shots. So we'll get more into those guys down the road here as we continue here in the off season. But last final thought is that, you know, the other problem is that the Hartford Wolfpack, you know, widely considered one of the weaker developmental programs in the AHL. So that's an issue as well. But you and I both believe Mike Sullivan will definitely bring some stability back to the Rangers and help develop these young guys. Not just guys like Jake Gensel that he developed in Pittsburgh, but Brian Rust, Brian Dumoulin, and others. But last thing I want to say here is make sure you guys follow us on X, Rangers, at Rangers Digest, YouTube. It's at Rangers Digest YT, because Darius, right, the conversation will continue over there, not just in these videos, but over on X as well.
Absolutely. Check us out on X. You can find it in the description, and I'm going to pin it into the comments of this video. And let us know how you feel in the comments as well, because it's going to be a fiery one. I know that. I know a lot of people are very passionate about this topic, but like Bret said, the conversation continues on X. So follow us on X. We're going to be on all socials soon. We're going to have an announcement on that very shortly. That's going to be very exciting. But again, let us know how you feel in the comments, because this has been something that's been going on for a long time. I feel like Rangers fans are sick of it. of it, and I hope that this, is a small step in the right direction. So let us know how you feel in the comments, and if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.